Hello and welcome to Lancast. I have my good friend Tom Brock here from high school. What's up, Tom?
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about this episode. Tom and I haven't talked in years just because we kind of lost touch, and he lives in Zurich and has a different outlook on the world, which is great, and that's what we try to do. Now, Tom, you're an interesting guy for many reasons, but I remember specifically back in high school, you kind of knew politics already. Like, and I admit I didn't know jack squat. Like, I'd once in a while like just regurgitate what I'd heard my parents say, and they were kind of like lifelong standard liberal Democrats up to a point until the Clinton administration. But that's a long story. But I admit I didn't really follow politics or the news that much. And, I used to overhear you talking to other people, and I was like, how does he know all this stuff? I think we might have been in AP government class together for a while, but I actually dropped out of that because I didn't really apply myself, honestly. So, yeah, I would love to. All right. So just to start off the bat, like last time we spoke politically on Facebook, I think it was right after the election. And
yeah.
You had some questions for me as to why I had voted for Trump. And I don't know if you still have these questions or if you've softened that stance or like you were pretty surprised. I want to start there, but
no, that's yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I think one of the things, being over here, that, when I talk to people over here, because look, let's face it, Trump is not exactly the most popular guy on this side of the Atlantic.
Sure.
That said, he does have a following, but I mean, I think a lot of people would want to be curious as to why, given everything, what happened with Trump in the first term, his character, those sorts of things, and really, how he impacted America's standing in the world, what would compel somebody to vote for Trump this time around?
Sure. I'll just tell you, for me, I mean, this was actually my first time voting for him. I was a third-party voter in the last 3 elections before that. But with a caveat, I so was disillusioned by the Democratic Party. I mean, I voted for Obama in 2008, and that was the last time I voted for a Democratic president. And on the local level, I haven't voted for a Democrat since 2018. But that's a story for another time. But in 2016, even though I didn't like either party, so I voted third party. But I considered him the lesser evil. Like, if I were to choose between these two, like, no way I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And then 2020 came around, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like, well, I don't like what he's done in office, but I mean, I can't vote for Joe Biden. Are you kidding me? But I'll go with third party again. And I almost voted for him that time. So 2024 came around, and it was just a huge confluence of things that had happened since then. The Biden administration is historically terrible in my eyes. And, there were certain things that were giving me hope, like he brought RFK Jr. into his administration, embraced Tulsi Gabbard. And then there was I think Josh also said the whole assassination attempt in Butler kind of radicalized a lot of people. I was like, this guy's a genuine enemy of the deep state. Like, this was I don't believe in the single, lone nut theories with respect to a lot of assassination attempts. But in that case, it was like, why do they want to kill him? He must be some kind of threat. I mean, that was another thing. But there were so many reasons. But at the end of the day, there was no way I was going to vote for, Kamala. And after years of people telling me I'm wasting my vote as a third party voter, I was like, okay, well, I might as well embrace some hopium here. Like, I think maybe Trump will end some wars. Maybe he'll implement all these things he's campaigning on. If not, well, I'm not going to regret my vote because he's still better than Kamala and the Democrats. So that's my whole political journey in a nutshell. I could go into a lot of specific issues, domestic and otherwise, but to me, it's a no-brainer. I still, and just to put a clause into that, Josh and I are very critical of the Trump administration right now, and I'm very disappointed in a lot of directions he's gone. But at the end of the day, I don't regret my vote at all. It was the right call at the moment. as much as it's the right call in my eyes to criticize him right now. So there you go.
That's fair.
Did you have anything to add to that? I mean, Josh has
Well,
a little bit different background and journey.
well, I was raised Republican, but I was deeply involved in politics even at a young age. Parents were hardcore Republicans, you know, Mitt Romney, John McCain. I'm only 30, by the way, so I'm like 8 years younger than Danny. So, I mean,
only 8 years.
yeah. So
30 is a good age.
so yeah. So I remember being like, I don't know, how old would I have been? 8 years old when Bush ran for the second time, and I actually stayed up all night with my dad because we were so worried that John Kerry was gonna take away our guns and all that stuff. So my thought on Trump's outlook to other countries, like you were saying, is sure, I think he's very crude compared to, like, you know, the zipped up, buttoned up European Union. But for some reason, he seems to communicate his way better with everyone but the EU. Like, he could communicate well with India. He can communicate well with Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. I mean, he's been able to talk with people that other presidents never even tried to. You know, I mean, he stepped over into North Korea in his first term. He stepped over the border and shook North Korea's dictator's hand in North Korea. So I really don't care what people think about his character, because I apologize for my chickens. I don't know what to do about this.
I don't hear it, actually.
I don't hear it. So.
Oh, good. Oh, okay. Sorry. Edit that out, Danny. So anyways, I don't really care about a person's character when I'm voting, because I don't think any president in the modern era has had good character, because they've all been murderers. I mean, we haven't had a real declaration of war since World War II. So therefore, the thousands and thousands and thousands of American men who have died for our country, they're only dead because of our president. You know, our president did unconstitutional wars for the last, 80 years, basically. So, like, when I'm voting for Trump, most of the time, it's been pure economics. I was raised poor. He was looking more out for tax cuts. And I still believe in trickle-down economics. I still believe if you tax the rich, you incentivize them to do two things: move, leave the country, or raise the prices to cover so they have the same margins. So I've always been a big believer in tax cuts. And also, he did the biggest tax cut for American families in 2018. And they just did it again with the big, beautiful bill that wasn't so beautiful. But anyways, long story short, like, I guess the EU can say that he has bad character and that he's a bully and he's a jerk. But at the end of the day, he's the reason why you guys have a defense. And he's the reason why the EU have security and safety, because we're your military, basically. You know, that's why you guys can afford social programs. That's why you guys can let in migrants and take care of them better than we could. Like, character isn't I don't think people in power have good character to begin with. So I just don't really care about it.
So if I can just bring in 2 quick points. The first point is Switzerland is neither a member of the EU or NATO.
I know, but your neighbors are, though.
Yeah, that's true. So the second point I would say, though, is that I think that, and maybe Europe was slowly getting to the realization, but I think that Europe was going to need to spend more on its own defense. And I think that we were getting there. Now, I think the arrival of Trump has sort of accelerated things. And I think that, obviously the expectation before Trump got there was that they were going to get to 2% of GDP. And Trump has said, well, no, you need to pay 5%. And in most cases, I guess with the exception of Spain, everybody's now agreed to do that. So I mean, I think that, I think that, so yeah, I mean, look, I think that that's a good thing that Europe has come to that point. I think the second thing that we're noticing even in Europe is that, even though they may or may not disagree with Trump or agree with him, they are learning to deal with him. So look, they got to a deal on tariffs. There's the 5% on defense. And I think that, Europe is slowly arriving at a position to where, okay, look, we can deal with Trump here on these sets of issues, and then on the issues where, we have disagreements, then we'll just agree to disagree. So I mean, look, I think everybody's trying to find a happy medium when it comes to how to handle or how to work with Trump. So.
He's definitely hard to work with. I mean, I definitely, I sympathize any leader that has to like kind of come crawling to the biggest president in the world and like try and negotiate on behalf of his nation, but also know that he has to lose in order for his country to win. I mean, that's got to be hard for any leader. But that's what we voted for. I think for too long the world in general has taken advantage of our taxpayers and have for too long taken advantage of our kindness in tariffs. Well, not just tariffs, but just in trade in general. We seem to have always been on the losing end. And I feel like it's a privilege for countries to do business with us because, well, we consume a lot. We are the largest consumer nation in the world. So if you want to be in our economy, maybe you should pay tariffs and show your gratitude. And maybe that's imperialist or supremacist for me to say, but for better or worse, we are still the number one power in the world. And for too long, we are getting taken advantage of. And for too long, the deep state, like Daniel was saying, was gladly taking our tax dollars and wasting it in other places. And we got tired of it. So we decided to vote for a very radical man that made people mad on purpose. Like that's some of the reason why some people voted for Trump, even in the third party. They're like, we hate the deep state. We hate our bureaucracy. So we're just going to vote this guy in that is declaring that he's going to make life hell for them.
Right. And also just to touch on the concept of America first, which is what Josh and I are about. I mean, he seemed like the closest thing we had, since Ron Paul, of an authentic guy who's going to accomplish that. And when I say America first, it's not like, well, I don't care about other countries, but the philosophy is that if we focus on doing what's best right here in America, it's actually also good for other countries, as opposed to like the opposite ideology of kind of like globalism. And, I mean, that to me, like the problem with the Democratic Party, it's all about blind collectivism and virtue, which is kind of has unintended consequences that do more harm than good. I mean, it goes back into like, I'm a non-interventionist, which is America First philosophy. And, by not waging these stupid wars, which like the Bush administration did, it's better off for everybody, including us. I mean, especially us.
Well, can I give an example of that before Tom responds? So a good example of America sticking their nose in money where it doesn't belong is the Middle East in general. If we wouldn't have been in the Middle East for 20 years, the EU would not have the blowback of migrants basically fleeing their failed states and going into Europe. I mean, like Syria, it's kind of our fault, the Syrian migrants, Somalian migrants, all the Middle East is always on fire, seemingly because we're there. I don't think Saddam Hussein was a good guy by any means, or Muammar Gaddafi was a good guy by any means. But there is something to be said about a minority government for somehow having a stable governance. He must have been doing something right. Because Iraq, like he was a Shiite, and Iraq is Sunni, right? The majority of Iraq was Sunni. So he was a minority government, and he kept it going for years and years, and then we overthrew him, and then ISIS came. It's just I feel like if America truly went America first and they just took care of us, the taxpayers, and we got our nose and our guns and our money out of every other nation, the EU probably wouldn't have as many migrants getting on boats and going over.
Well, I mean, I certainly think, well, I don't know about Saddam being such a great ruler, and that's not what you said, but anyway,
he definitely isn't a great ruler.
but
there's something to be said about stability.
Yeah, but no,
Yeah.
to your point about instability in the Middle East, creating tensions, certainly as far as immigration into Europe is concerned, that is quite poignant. And I think that if we can talk about, I guess, threads of, I guess, similarities between what's happened in the U.S. with, the resurgence of Trump and MAGA and America First, you do start to see within certain countries. So I did mention that Trump, he's generally not popular, but I mean, that split is more like 2-1. It's not like 90-10. There are a lot of people here in Europe with whom his message does resonate. And I think that migration is certainly one of those rallying points that certainly with what happened in 2015 with the migrants coming into Europe. And then you had situations such as Germany where I think Angela Merkel, she essentially said, come on in.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I think at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, there is this sense amongst some in Europe that, maybe we took too many in. We do want to help people when we can, but we took too many in, and it's overwhelming certain parts of our infrastructure, our society, so forth. And as a result, that combined with the fact that there seems to be a general sense amongst some across Europe that the governments aren't listening to us. The governments, they're more interested in making trade deals, that, they're more interested in further European cohesion and things like that, rather than listening to us on the ground. That tends to, how do I say this? It's helped the appeal for some of parties like AfD in Germany, National Rally, Marine Le Pen's party in France, and then I mean, you look at Italy, for example. They had, I guess, Brothers of Italy, which they tend to be right to far right, but they won the last Italian election. And if you ask certain people who, I guess, like you guys, you might have voted differently in the past, but I think that they got to the sense that, well, hell, we tried everything else, so we'll give these guys a shot and see if they can get stuff done. And I guess, yeah, Germany, they're going to have an election in 2029, France in 2 years' time. And so, I would say that, how do I say this? The concept of behind America first, or the sentiment behind America first, I don't think it's unique to the U.S. I think that there is a general frustration with governments all across the board, and that's in part is contributing to the rise of these parties certainly against mainstream parties.
Well, it's basically globalism versus nationalism.
Right.
I mean, that's basically what the war in the whole world is. It's globalist interests, multiculturalism, and corporations, making trillions of dollars, and nationalists who believe that their nation has a certain culture and they want to keep that culture, but the globalists are allowing basically free immigration into these countries that have a nationalist base, and it's not jiving well.
Now, let me be clear. I mean, because essentially, I'm an immigrant. I live in Switzerland, so I think immigration's a good thing generally. I think that in my case, I came to Switzerland. I had a skill set, I hope, that the Swiss need, and I'd like to think that I'm making a positive contribution to Swiss society. And I think that, look, if we can get to the point to where, countries can ask, the question, okay, does this person have a skill set we need in the country? Can they make a positive contribution? Are they, as long as they're not affiliated with terrorism and crime, and if we have the infrastructure to handle it, then immigration shouldn't be a problem. Now, I do think that when you get into situations where, like in 2015 in Germany, where basically you essentially flung the doors open, and you didn't ask those questions of all the people coming in, then maybe sometimes maybe there could be a problem. And I suspect, and I'm trying not to get too involved in U.S. domestic politics, but I do suspect that that some of the immigration policies of the Biden administration, where a lot of people did come across the border, I just think that from an infrastructure standpoint, there were a lot of people. I saw pictures in New York, for example, where there were just a lot of people who, they came across the border. They really didn't have anywhere to go, and it's just, what do you do with all these people?
You want to know what happened in New York? Would you like to know?
Please.
They were giving them hotel rooms for months at a time, paid for by the taxpayer, and giving them cell phones and food stamps.
Wow.
Yeah. They were taking our tax dollars to give it to these people. And it got so bad in America where the governor of Texas, which has the longest border with Mexico, tried to shut the border down with his state. Yep. And the federal government came in with a forklift and lifted the fence up that they made. And they actually had shut down all illegal immigration for, 3 days, Danny? It was like 3 or 4 days where not a single person got across the border. The federal government, by force, came, lifted the fence up, and a whole bunch of people streamed in. It was all live on TV. Just completely demoralizing. And the governor, he really didn't have a choice, because the court system said that the federal government had all legal rights to deal with the border, even though it was impacting Texas in an extremely negative way. These were communities of less than 5,000 people, and they all of a sudden had tens of thousands of people at a time. Yeah. So, it's just crazy. And you were talking about the countries, how immigration is negatively affecting the EU. The UK isn't part of the EU, but the
Not
UK,
anymore.
Right. I know. So the UK is having just crazy problems right now with the immigrants that have come there, and the government won't do a thing about it. There is protesting almost every day, because I follow a lot of the UK stuff, because the UK, what's going on there is really interesting, because the people clearly want deportations. Clearly, they are emphatic. They want deportations, but the government is just like, no, we're not gonna do anything.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think what countries need to do across the board is, okay, do we want immigration or don't we? Full stop. If yes, then basically, then you have to think about, okay, what do we need them in for? Do we just want to have people, again, to help our economy? Do they have skill sets or something that the country needs? Are they coming for family reunification? Those sorts of things. And then basically build a policy around that. And I think that in the U.S., I think my concern with what's happening in the U.S. is that, yes, there are probably too many illegal immigrants in the U.S. Yes, Trump is implementing certain measures to bring that number down. But then the question is, what comes after that? Because I can tell you, for all the visions that he has for, let's say, building AI plants in the U.S. and all these other various high-end manufacturing jobs. Look, I will tell you, at least for the first 5 or 10 years, the U.S. will not have enough labor for those jobs. You're going to have to import the skills, at least initially, into the U.S. And the question is that, okay, Trump is making clear the kind of immigration we don't want, or America doesn't want, but what kind of immigration does he want? And I think, and look, and that question is not unique to the U.S. It's also unique to Europe. We're having issues figuring out that question as well.
No, it's a good question. Yeah, I don't know if there's any more on this topic you guys want to cover, but no, that's great.
Well, I had one question, like Trump, when he first was elected, he said that, Sweden is, I think he said Sweden is a hellhole right now or something like that. So like he was talking about like immigration, and there was some gang rapings going on in Sweden. Like, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But like, I can't take Trump's word for gospel, right? I mean, you live there, and I'm assuming you get paid well. I'm assuming you get paid well, and you live in a very comfortable area. So maybe you're not living where the immigrants will be doing those things. But what are the challenges of immigration in Sweden?
Well, Sweden is 1,500 miles north of here. I'm in Switzerland.
I'm sorry. Those two countries confuse me sometimes.
No, it's fine.
Switzerland and Sweden. Good grief. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I mean, look, in Switzerland, I think that in Switzerland they have taken. Well, okay, one, we have treaties with the EU, so obviously, if you're EU citizen, you can live here without question, pretty much. In terms of people who are not from the EU, Switzerland has a relatively strict policy on it, and you also have to bear in mind that we're landlocked. So basically, we're how do I say this? We're not an easy country to get to, and so basically, when when people who are illegal end up here, rightly or wrongly, it's not that hard to identify them and get rid of them.
That was funny.
No, I mean, and so I would say that certainly, in the case of Switzerland, when it comes to illegal immigration, we don't have it as bad, let's say, as Sweden in particular. I mean, I do know that there are issues in Sweden. I'm just not well enough versed to talk about it, but
that was my bad.
That's okay. But
no, that's okay. That actually made me think of something. If you guys don't mind me segueing into a different topic, I remember during the pandemic, Sweden got a lot, at least in the news I was consuming. They were notorious in some circles, but also heroic for having stayed open, depending on who you ask. I wanted to ask you, what did Switzerland, how did they deal with the pandemic in terms of,
So I mean, to give you a bit of context, I mean, I'll first tell you what France and Italy did. So obviously Milan, which is actually 3 hours away from here, they implemented, I guess that was the first cluster in Europe, and Milan, they basically shut everything down. It almost got to the point to where, they were pretty much mandated to stay at home. And I think if you wanted to go out, so even to the grocery store, even to go out for a walk, you could only do it within a certain distance, maybe 3 miles or something like that. And you had to sign a declaration stating why you're out in the street and stuff. Yeah. And so, and obviously a lot of people, they didn't like it because you have kids at home. The kids need to go out. And so, and France had a similar system. In Switzerland, it wasn't nearly as bad. So, I mean, we didn't have those kinds of constraints. So basically in Switzerland, the store or the bars and restaurants were shut, but there were no restrictions. If you wanted to go outside, It's fine. I mean, initially there was a restriction to be within groups of 5 and then 10, and then they did away with that. And look, if you wanted to take a train across the country to go skiing, you could do that. Nothing was open, but in terms of concessions. But look, I mean, if you have your own skis, can hike up a mountain, you can go skiing. So look, we had a lot more freedom as opposed to many other parts of Europe. But that being said, you know, we don't have anywhere near the population density
Right.
as most European cities. I mean, Zurich, you know, we're 400,000 people. So, you know, you'd have to walk a while to bump into anybody. So, I mean, so look, I mean, we were able to do it. I mean, you know, whether or not that would have been practical for Milan or Paris, I can't speak to that.
Interesting. I have so many thoughts I want to say about I don't know where to start. I mean, no, that sounds like, yeah, Switzerland was kind of in the middle, not being too extreme authoritarian, but also not totally, not like Sweden, where they remained open and actually had better numbers in terms of, you know, COVID casualties. And yeah, I mean, this is part of what also radicalized me. I actually became a Republican committee member because I was against local policies. I don't know how Switzerland dealt with like school closings and churches, but I mean, I kind of, the sources I followed, I mean, I saw through the lies from the beginning, like, you know, why are we wearing masks in public? They don't work. And like, why are we shutting down this thing? And it's not really actually curbing the spread. But then when and this is one of the things I both criticize and respect about Trump, like, I mean, the warp speed vaccine thing, like, bad idea. Like, why not test these vaccines a little longer? But on the other hand, he would have never in a million years mandated it like Joe Biden did. And yeah, I personally am very skeptical about, I never got the shot because I had a very severe case of COVID in January 2021. And I was like, hey, I don't need it. Natural immunity actually still works, like, despite like the attempts to reverse 500 years of science. And so I knew I was fine, you know, at least for the rest of the year. But the people, mainly Democrats, were pressuring me. You got to get the shot. It's your duty. And I was like, this is totally bogus. I'm starting to get on a rant now because this really affected me. And like, I had a mandate at work, and my wife did, and like, I had to get a religious exemption. And yeah, no, I'm not going to take the risk. Like, are most of the friends I know who got the shot, are they fine? Yeah, for now, sure, they're fine, and I hope they continue to be fine. But I also know of people who were vaccine injured. I've heard like stories of sudden deaths, like, oh, well, you know, you can't totally write it off. I talked to our local coroner about this, and, you know, he was actually, you're the first person in the county who's actually asked me about this, but nobody ever asked me to conduct an autopsy where I was looking for, you know, the shot as the cause of death. So I can't confirm any deaths because of the shot. But on the other hand, he admitted he'd seen a ton of blood clots in people that were unusual. And that was that. And he actually was, there's too much I can reveal about our conversation, but it was a big eye opener. But
is he running for re-election, Danny?
Probably, like, I don't know.
Whenever he stops being the coroner, that would be a great guest to have on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I've watched plenty of podcasts about coroners that, you know, retired after COVID and stuff, where they said that the clots weren't even like platelets. It was like a fibrous, almost looked like a spider web. It was like almost like tissue. This fibrous tissue that was the blood clots.
There's a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions about, you know, whether it should even be called a vaccine. And you know, that's the part of the reason, like, you know, RFK gets slammed by the media all the time. Like, they don't want him because he's undermining the machine, and they're calling him a nut, and like, you know, he's going against the medical establishment. But maybe the medical establishment isn't perfect. You know, it was back in the 60s, they were still telling you that smoking is good for you. Like, how many other times is the science is going to change, So,
well, weren't they also giving stay-at-home moms like practically meth? Weren't they giving?
There was a lot of sketchy science in
They
recent
were
history.
giving like mothers just like straight up Adderall. like oh,
Right.
I'm
can't say I can't say I've heard of any of that research. Look, at the end of the day, look, I believe in vaccines. I think that, look, I appreciate people who don't. I think that what for future crises, I think it is going to be helpful, for us to look to see, what we got right, what we didn't get right, and whether or not, and certainly in China, for example, where basically, you had a situation where governments may have used this as an opportunity, a power grab, or and basically, at least in the West, maybe we should look at ways, to limit that going forward. Look, and the one thing I will give Trump credit for with warp speed, and I know that you guys may have issues, but look, the one good thing about Trump is that, I think he asked, okay, what are we going to need to get back to normal? Somebody said a vaccine. Okay. So he threw caution to the wind. He threw all this money. He's like, yeah, get me a vaccine. And look, I give him credit for that. I mean, now, your points about whether or not there could be long-term implications from the vaccine, it's a fair one. Look, I'm vaccinated. I hope I don't have issues down the road, but that being said, look, I think vaccines are a good thing. I do think that, we do need to look at, how do I say this? We need to find a better balance for future crises between, I guess, trampling people's life, but also trying to, keep people safe and healthy. I mean,
Sure.
But I'm not a scientist. I don't know what questions to ask there.
Well, Danny knows I'm like crazy libertarian, right? Like I vote Republican because I have a family, I have 4 kids, and I need cheap fuel, cheap energy, and I am a libertarian, but libertarians will never win in my lifetime. That being said, I vote Democrat. I vote Republican. So, what does your Constitution say? Like, I know you're an American, but our Constitution says everything that happened during COVID was unconstitutional and they shouldn't have done it, whether it was a emergency or not. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the federal government can shut down every business and keep corporations open, but shut down family-owned businesses. I mean, we have a 10th Amendment, which states anything that's not in the Constitution is left up to each individual state. But the federal government basically told every governor, you're going to shut down, or, if you guys have issues, we're not going to be able to help you. So like the federal government basically shut the whole country down, other than like one state, which was South Dakota, I think, or North Dakota. Yeah. That being said, I don't know if you even read the Constitution you live under, but like, what's the range of rights that a citizen has compared to like the American Constitution?
Well, I should tell you, I'm actually in the process of going for Swiss citizenship, so I've had to read a bit of it. Nice. That being said, so under Swiss law, if I recall correctly, the Swiss government does have certain powers in a situation like COVID. And in fact, there was a referendum in 2013, I think, that addresses, let's say you had a pandemic or epidemic or whatever, do you agree to give the Swiss federal government, these powers? And the Swiss people said yes. And so they do have some powers to shut businesses down, to limit gathering sizes, that sort of thing. But they can only do it for a certain number of days. So, and I forgot what it was, but they have to, how do I say this? So basically they either have to, and I can't remember if it's 6 months or 3 months, but basically at that period, they have to decide, okay, whether conditions still exist to extend, these powers. So there are some powers that the Swiss government have. They're not overriding, but so basically the Swiss government doesn't have the ability to say, you have to stay in your home, and if you want to go out, you must give us a reason and make it and sign it onto an official document like they did in France. They don't have that power, but they do have some powers,
So here's, maybe this is a dumb question, but like, what are the political parties in Switzerland like? Do you have like, is it kind of a similar model of Democrats versus Republicans, or are there more parties?
I think they have parliament. You guys are parliamentarian, right? You guys have five.
Yeah, we've got 5 or 6 parties, and basically, so you have socialists and Greens on the left. You have a party that calls themselves the middle, but they're more center right. And then Free Democrats, they're sort of center right to right, and then you have the Swiss People's Party, which they're right to far right. So there's 5 parties. In terms of the Swiss system, which is interesting. So we do have a judicial branch. We have a legislative, which is the parliament, lower and upper house. And then we have the executive. Now, what makes the executive unique is that it's not one person. The executive is actually 7 people. And basically, and basically, in terms of, one of them is always going to be head of state, so they're going to be the president of the country. But it's a 1-year basis, and basically the parliament will elect somebody to be president the following year.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah,
really. And so realistically, basically, the president, they don't have any more power than any other members of the executive. They all meet every week to take decisions about how to carry out executive policy. But the thing is, with this executive, they all come from different parties. And so you have I think they call it the congenial concept or whatever. But the thing is that you have to compromise to carry out policy, because that's how it's done. There's 7 people. You have to come to a consensus. And so we do have parties. By and large, it tends to be a lot more congenial, just because of the nature of how things are set up here. And then the other piece of it, so we call it direct democracy, but the other piece of it is that the Swiss people get to vote on a lot of things. So, for example, if as a Swiss citizen, so let's say I'll probably be a citizen in November, but let's say in November I wanted to add a new amendment to the Swiss Constitution.
Yeah.
So basically, all I'd have to do is I'd get a petition. I'd get, I think, 100,000 people within 18 months, and then I would submit it, and then it comes on the ballot, and then people will vote on that. Conversely, if the Swiss Parliament passes a law, and you don't like it, you could get 50,000 people over a certain period, and that law comes to the people for a vote. So the thing is that the Swiss people, how do I say this? The Swiss people have a stake in terms of at least some of the decisions that are made in this country. And so I think that, and I'm not saying it's perfect here, but I am saying that basically, I think because at least some of the Swiss, they do feel vested in how the country, the government runs, or at least how policies formulated. I don't think you have the same kind of anger that you're seeing in other countries. And so, anyway.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I wish we had more of that here. Like, the closest thing, what you said about the direct democracy, we once in a while have on our ballot, like a ballot initiative where you can vote on an actual proposed bill, or yeah, I don't know about constitutional amendments. Those are a little harder to make, but yeah, I wish we had more direct access to those because I mean, I like the idea of direct democracy. In your view, do you think it's a more effective system than what we have here?
I say it works for Switzerland. I'm not sure if
if it can
that could
scale up.
work. I'm not sure if that could work in the U.S. And yeah, you're right. I mean, look, Switzerland's the size of New Jersey. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you know, and so I mean, I'm not sure that a model, and plus we've been doing it for 100 some odd years. I'm not sure that it would be so easily replicable to
Yes.
the U.S. or any
That's a
other
very
country.
good point. That's kind of the eternal question. Like I conceded to our friend John on the last episode we did. He was talking about healthcare in Japan, which is kind of more socialized, if you will. And with the way he described it, I said, "Look, John, that sounds great. I will concede that's better than the current system we have here in the U.S. But what could it scale up here?" And I think there's a lot of things that are great in other countries that can't scale up here in the U.S. just because our sheer size and the way we're set up. But yeah, no, that's a good point. Did you have anything to add, Josh? Because I did want to move to another topic.
Yeah, I thought the way you guys run the executive branch is pretty cool. I like that. I like so it's not popular vote, or are the executives popular vote, and then the parliament votes of the 7 to run to be the leader for 1 year.
So basically, so the executive, they would be decided by the parliament.
Okay.
And then the people vote their representatives in the parliament. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's that's crazy. So it's kind of like a republic. Well, no, it is a republic. It is, right?
Yeah. We call it a confederation, but yeah, it's more or less a republic. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I think our system of governments worked better when the senators, each state gets 2 senators. You know, I think our government worked better when the senators were picked by the state legislators rather than popular vote. I think that we lost a lot of stability and credibility when we started letting basically have 2 House of Representatives basically now. You know, it's popular vote for both.
Well, just to be clear here, we do, I guess we can call them a Senate, but basically, so the lower house is, just the House, let's say. The upper house, I don't know if there's an English translation for it, but you can call it a Senate. I mean, the concept is the same, is that we have 26 cantons. Most of the cantons can send 2 people. They're elected by popular vote. And then, but I do think that, but in terms of the executive, I mean, that is done from the parliament and the legislature, and they're from different parties. So, like I said, we do get to some consensus, we get to some compromise, and I think as a result, there's a bit more tranquility within the Swiss political system than in other countries.
So what are your states called? Your territories?
Cantons.
Cantons. So here in America, we have state legislators and governors. Like you guys have that too?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So it's a federal system. I mean, so basically we have, local, state, and federal. I mean, you can replace state with canton, but it's the same concept.
Cool. Yeah. I don't really have any more questions, Danny. If you want to segue into something else, I like your system though.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, just some final thoughts about that. Like, I've always complained about the 2-party system here, and especially when I was voting third party. But then again, I'm not sure about it these days, because I was able to join the Republican Party and maybe work on, at least attempt to change it within. My goal in becoming a committee member was to influence the local party and maybe have it kind of revert more to the party of Ron Paul as opposed to the direction it was going. And you know, I have personal problems with a lot of the Liz Cheneys and the never Trump Republicans, not because I love Trump, but because a lot of them have TDS is a real problem. And, you know, Russiagate and everything that happened starting in 2016, like it's doing more harm than good to the party. Like,
Danny.
Yeah.
We should ask him if he's a Putin if he likes Putin or not. You know, because they're neutral.
If he likes Putin, well,
I like Switzerland.
I mean,
Yeah.
Switzerland did business with Hitler. I mean, come on, isn't Putin the next Hitler? Come on.
I like Switzerland. No, I mean, look, I think Switzerland's I think Switzerland's formal position is that they have mirrored the EU when it comes to sanctions. That's the Swiss policy. So yeah.
Okay.
Well,
that was less exciting than I wanted. Okay.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to ask you about.
Well,
Russia.
when you do a certain amount of trade with the EU, sometimes, you know, there's some decisions you don't have independence in making. So
yeah. Sure. I did want to ask you, somewhat related, is foreign policy. What is the perception in Switzerland about what's happening with Israel, Palestine, and also the U.S.'s role in? I mean, Josh and I talk about it a lot, and maybe we lose listeners because of it. I mean, I call it a genocide, and I don't think our government should be supporting it. We're giving all the weapons. We could end it tomorrow. And that's one of my big disappointments with Trump. But also, you know, Christian Zionists in this country are part of the problem. Like, it's blind devotion to. Anyway, I don't want to influence your answer. What do people in Switzerland think?
Well, I mean, I think. Well, look, I mean, you have a wide view of opinions. I mean, I think that being said, I do think that the general consensus is that they do feel that what's happening in Palestine is genocide, and that you know, look, while you know they condemn what happened on October 7th, you know, certainly what's being done in Palestine, in their view, it's way over proportionate, you know, to what happened on October 7th, and that you know, things that we're seeing on the news now, starvation, really Israel just endlessly bombing Gaza when there's really nothing left to bomb. Yeah, I mean, I think that by and large, yeah, I mean, a lot of people will call it a genocide, and I think that their view is that I think their view is that the only person who could really stop it would be Donald Trump. I mean,
right. Yeah. So we're calling on him to stop it. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a large mass protests going on in other countries that I think, like Ireland, or I haven't kept up with the news recently, but I mean, in this country.
Well, the one in Ireland it's both against what they're doing to the Palestinians, and it's also very anti-Muslim at the same time. It's very weird. Ireland right now is really like trying to deport every single illegal Muslim immigrant that's there. Not the government, the people of Ireland are trying to do that.
That would surprise me.
They're very mad. Okay, I mean, I follow Scotland. I follow all of UK and Ireland.
Yeah.
Mainly because I have Irish and Scottish in me.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in that part of Europe. The people, not the government. The governments really don't care. The governments do not care. But they're I think what you're seeing online, Danny, it's less about, it's not Palestine. It's that they actually want immigrants to leave, and many of their immigrants are Muslim, and they're trying to deport them. Like, the people want them deported.
Well, I think there may be two things going on here, and I only bring this up because I do have quite a few friends of mine who are Irish, but you know, there has always been, I guess, a bit of sympathy or empathy with the Palestinian cause within Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
that's what I've observed.
and so that's the first point. Now, the second point, Josh, I think you're bringing up is that in terms of countries wanting to get rid of illegal immigration, I mean, we're seeing that across the board, in U.S., Europe, other parts of the world. So, I mean, I guess both things can be true, actually.
I think they both are true. I think that they both are true. Like, do you know who Tommy Robinson is?
I do.
Yeah. What's your opinion on him? Do you think he's just a racist hothead, or do you think he has a good heart and the media's trying to portray him to be a mini Donald Trump?
Who is he, Josh? I don't know who he is.
So Tommy Robinson, he was his whole culture is like soccer and sports and athletics, right, Tom? Like that's where it started.
Where it started.
He basically turned his soccer club into the equivalence of an American biker gang.
It's one way of putting it.
Yeah. So I you might know more about Tommy than I do. I've only watched 5, 6 podcasts with Tommy, and I watched his documentary. So, like, from what I've seen, he's just a normal dude who wants England to be England again, and he believes in the culture that England was prior to England being destroyed, basically. And he's being kind of violent, very violent, and he's picking fights with brawls with Muslim gangs, and it sometimes looks really bad, and he gets arrested, and then he politicized that he got arrested, and yeah.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Tommy Robinson. The only thing I would say is that, look, from what I've seen, he's been condemned by Nigel Farage, who, there are certain views that he and Tommy Robinson align on. They have a vision of, I guess, bringing back England the way it was.
Right.
But and I just think and look, there have been other people in Reform UK who have condemned Tommy Robinson. So I mean, to me, I'll just leave it there. I have to admit, I don't think much. I know who he is. I don't think much about him, but but the fact that you have people, from the right to far right who don't even like this guy says a lot. So
America has an equivalent to that, and that's Nick Fuentes.
Sure. Yeah.
So he has his following, but also I think there's an underlying pen of it where everyone on the right doesn't like Nick Fuentes, they say, but then they also appreciate some of the things Nick Fuentes does and says because they don't have the courage to do it themselves. So with Tommy Robinson, he is the person that I think many people in Britain, they wish they could do what he's doing, but they're not willing to accrue the political hatred and the imprisonment and all that stuff. So he's like their secret supporter in their homes, but then in public, I don't like Tommy Robinson. He's a horrible human being. But in closed doors, they're like, I don't have the courage to be Tommy Robinson, and I appreciate what he's doing because someone has to do something.
Well, I'll put it this way. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I would have more courage for people, who would support Tommy Robinson in public than I do for people who secretly, they're saying one thing, but then, and frankly, I mean, basically, maybe there's been a lot of that has probably led to the frustration, right or left or center. But, that sort of mentality has led to a lot of frustration that people are feeling. I mean,
totally
with politicians. And so, yeah.
Cool. Do you guys want to talk about anything? I know you have to go soon, Josh. Anything else you guys want to cover?
How much gold does Switzerland still have from World War II?
If I knew that, do you think I'd be working? Oh boy.
That's a good question.
And no, it's not. And from what I know, it's not hidden under UBS. But anyway, anyhow, that's a big running joke here. But anyway,
that sounds like a fun rabbit hole. All right. Well, thanks, Tom, for your time. This has been a fun conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
We can talk again soon. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Peace.
If you would like to be a guest on Lancast or contact us for any reason, send an email to lancastamerica1st@gmail.com. That's Lancast with 2 C's, America First @gmail.com. Thank you.